morning and welcome to another edition of Live with Dr. Wendy. It is a great night. There's so much to get to. And as always, I am joined in studio by my colleague and constitutional scholar, Larry Dersham. We're going to get into a little bit of that later on in the show. But first, hey, sports fans, guess what? Baseball is back. But don't expect it to look quite the same as you remember growing up. And I don't just mean because there are no fans in the stands. Baseball looked very different this week as we saw a couple of opening games. Now, I don't know about you, but I grew up going to baseball games in the summertime. And I remember singing "Take Me Out to the Ball Game" during the seventh inning stretch, really eating peanuts and Cracker Jacks, just having all of the kind of summer fun that almost was an oasis, a haven, an escape from the politics and the difficulties of life. Nostalgic, really, is what we think about it now, not just because we can't go, but because baseball games are very different nowadays. And we're going to get to that in just a minute. But if you were one of those many fans who thought you were going to actually watch the games this week to take a break from COVID-19 news, who else was throwing out the first pitch at one of the games? Yes, it was none other than Dr. Fauci. So Dr. Fauci, remember, he is the director of the National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Diseases. He was the headline Thursday night, not because he gave another coronavirus briefing, but because he was probably, at least for a brief period of time, the most famous person on the field at the opening game between the New York Yankees and the Washington Nationals. Now, that's right, he's a big Nats fan. So he was able to take the field totally decked out in Nats gear, appropriately masked. But boy, did he toss a wild one. I think probably the headline became not so much that he was tossing the pitch, but the pitch itself. I mean, he probably would love to have a do-over of that wild ball that he threw, but there was nobody in the fans to see. We're just all talking about it after the fact. Did you see that pitch, Larry, if that's what you want to call it?
Right, I did, Wendy, and he basically threw it to the ground, but I think that the pitch, he told people afterwards that he threw it that way because he didn't want anybody to catch anything.
Oh, boy.
But one good thing that came out of it, though, by throwing that, he did flatten the curve of ball a little bit.
Okay, those are really funny jokes, Larry, but we always like to say when we're lawyers making jokes that it's a good thing we keep our day jobs. That's probably what Dr. Fauci was thinking after that first pitch, don't you think? However, let's talk about that as well, because some fans are calling foul on Fauci. It's true, he had a mask on during the pitch, but he was filmed without one later on in the stands. So he's got to practice what he preaches. Remember, credibility is everything in our business, isn't it? So to be fair, when he was called out on it, he explained that he was dehydrated and you cannot drink through a mask, at least not easily. However, those games, those opening night games, actually made headlines for another reason as well. Remember that on Thursday, July 23rd, every player and coach from both the Washington Nationals and the New York Yankees took a knee for 60 seconds of silence, but it was before the national anthem was played. They actually stood for the national anthem. And I just want to clear that up because I've heard so many news reports about them kneeling during the national anthem. They didn't. They stood for the national anthem. Now, that wasn't true at one of the other games, but both of those teams did stand. Nonetheless, it still made headlines because it was a display of unity between the MLB and BLM. How do you like that? At another game, same night, all members, or at least I should say most members of the San Francisco Giants also took a knee during a moment of silence prior to that game, except for one man, San Francisco Giants pitcher Sam Coonrod. He was the only player to stand during that minute of silence. And basically what he said is what many Christians are saying, well, of course, that's what he's going to say. There's so many scriptures that talk about this. He explained that he can't kneel before anything besides God. And by the way, the team manager, Gabe Kapler, basically, he also kneeled during the ribbon ceremony as well as during the national anthem, said he respects Coonrod's decision to stand. Larry, does all of this mean that Colin Kaepernick might get listed because he might get signed now that everybody is sort of signing on to his movement? What do you think? Isn't he the one that started all of this years ago?
Yes, he did. And it was actually some time ago. It was on August 26, 2016, during a preseason exhibition game between the Green Bay Packers and the San Francisco 49ers, and quarterback Colin Kaepernick was seen for the first time sitting on the bench during the Star Spangled Banner, or the national anthem. Following the game, Kaepernick, he spoke to the media and he explained his decision. He said, I'm not going to stand to show pride in a flag for a country that oppresses Black people and people of color. And he also said, to me, this is bigger than football, and it would be selfish on my part to look the other way. And I think he did suffer some economic setbacks after making that decision. But it seems the whole thing is flipped now.
Well,
that everybody is bowing down.
Before we really think that the pendulum has swung, they didn't kneel. At least the first game where Fauci threw the pitch, those teams didn't kneel for the anthem. Some of the players on the other team did. However, talk about pendulum swinging. I remember Mike Pence. Remember this? 2017. It was October the 8th. He walked out of a game when people were kneeling. Now, remember, he flew all the way across the country only to walk out. So I guess we could say he took a stand when players took a knee. I remember at the time we were commenting on this and we said, if everyone did that, how would that impact the game? Players could kneel in an empty stadium, I guess, but that's what they're doing now. The stadiums are empty. So it's so much different, so many different ways. And remember back then, the coaches had a very different perspective on kneeling during the anthem, not kneeling during 60 seconds of silence like the teams did this year, but kneeling during the anthem. The coaches basically nowadays are saying, hey, everybody's got their own feelings, the intentions are high, everybody's got to do what they like. But along those lines about the respect for the flag, guess who is scheduled to throw out the first pitch when the Yankees take on the Red Sox on August 15th?
I'll bet it is none other than our beloved President Trump.
That's a good guess. You bet it. You bet it is. Now, I'll bet he has a better pitching arm than Dr. Fauci, but he also has less tolerance for disrespecting the flag. In fact, here's the catch, no pun intended. He actually doesn't want to participate in sports at all, not even as a spectator, according to him, unless the players stand. Now, this is something he has been very consistent about throughout the time that this has been going on, and certainly since Thursday when we had that showing of solidarity at the games. And this is going to be something he's really going to have to think about, because what he said was that he was looking forward to live sports, but he also said anytime he witnesses a player kneeling during the national anthem. So it'll be interesting to see how he is going to discuss how he feels about players kneeling during a 60-second moment of silence, or any other type of showing of unity or solidarity with respect to Black Lives Matter. It'll be interesting to see how he draws that distinction.
Right. This is kind of an interesting, this was a game that was played yesterday, Wendy, between the Boston Red Sox and the Baltimore Orioles. And they're at Fenway Park, they're in Boston. They put up a 254-foot long, 27-foot high Black Lives Matter banner, which is so large that it is literally visible from the International Space Station.
Oh my goodness.
But what's kind of the hypocrisy of this, that there's more Black Lives Matter banners in Fenway Park than there are Black ball players on the 2020 roster. So I think it's called virtue signaling. I think we need to do a whole show on virtue signaling, which is kind of a new term that's coming around. Was that virtue signaling, that they pretend this false virtue when basically they're not living up to their own signaling?
Well, here's an interesting issue that, we've been talking about this for years. Every time this comes up, we ask ourselves, should sports be a politics-free zone? Should it simply be about the game? Should it be an even playing field? Or should it be a place to protest racial injustice, societal injustices, religious differences. There are so many different things that have sort of politicized a variety of different sports. Is the playing field the place for politics?
I would say absolutely not. I think we're all looking for some relaxation, some political free zones where we can basically relax and be comfortable and not always be thinking about all the riots, the COVID-19 and so forth. And this was an interesting statement from Trump. I agree with this. He said, instead of kneeling, run for office. How about that?
Yeah.
Get out there and actually do something. This, just kneeling, come on, what are you doing? Just to try to show everybody that you believe in that. But run for office. If you don't like the way things are going in this country, run for office.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely right. The ballot box is the great equalizer. So don't take a knee, get on your feet and run. I love that. Well, we're going to talk a little bit more about some of these issues after the break, but boy, that's a welcome to professional sports and baseball season. We really have, we're off to a real big start, that's for sure. Anyway, stay with us. We're going to take a quick break. You are listening to Live with Dr. Wendy. Back in a flash. Welcome back. You are listening to Live with Dr. Wendy. Thank you for spending a bit of your Saturday night with us. Now let's move from stadiums to sanctuaries, including church. Larry, we have a famous guest today for the second half joining us that you and I have both known for years, who is currently in the trenches fighting for the right to peacefully assemble, not in chop or chaz, but in church. Tell us about Charles Lemandry.
Right. Charles Lemandry is, you heard that commercial. He's an amazing personal injury lawyer. And he does so many wonderful recoveries, medical malpractice, and so forth. But one of the really interesting things he does, Wendy, is he does pro bono, that means for free, religious liberty cases, including, as they mentioned, the Mount Soledad Cross. He's actually a hero of mine. He saved that cross.
Yes, he is.
One of the longest religious liberty cases in U.S. history. It may be the longest. It went on for at least 25 years until it was finally resolved, and that cross still stands today.
Larry, how'd you like to handle one case for 25 years? Would that just be the end of your law practice? No, well, Chuck Lemandry is a true hero. Yes. Yeah, and pro bono to boot. You're right.
Amazing. Another thing he's done, he's defending David Daleiden, who's the founder of the Center for Medical Progress and who videotaped Planned Parenthood trafficking in babies. And we'll get into that maybe another day, not today. But he's just an amazing person. And I'd like to introduce you right now to Charles Lemandry. Charles, are you there?
Hey, Chuck, one of the things that impresses me most about you is that you and your wife, Barbara, have been married for 23 years and have 5 children. Go figure. I am sure they have lived and breathed the Mount Soledad Cross case right along with you. They probably don't know life without it. Yes, that's for sure.
So, Chuck, I know that you're involved in defending churches against the draconian church closure measures imposed by the governor regarding the pandemic. And I just heard yesterday that the Supreme Court, SCOTUS for short, denied a Nevada church's right to break the rules. They're allowed a cap of 50 people, whereas the casinos there, the restaurants can have 50%, which could be in the hundreds, if not the thousands in some of those casinos. So it seems like religious discrimination. So I know you're working on these types of cases in California too. What is the latest? What's going on?
Chuck, I think it's important what you just pointed out. I want to make sure that we're emphasizing this. This is not a ruling on the merits. And I know a lot of people, they read a headline, it looks bad for the church, or it looks bad for one side or the other, and they don't really take the time to realize, well, what did the court actually look at? What was the question they were asking? Are they simply going to send it back for more information, or are they arriving at some sort of a monumental decision? So I think that's important. And I want to ask you, right? Yeah. So let me ask you something about yesterday's decision that everybody is wondering about, and it no doubt relates to your case as well. So in Neil Gorsuch's dissent, he basically gave I love talking points and nice sound bites, and he really gave us one. He said there is no world in which the Constitution permits Nevada to favor Caesar's Palace over Calvary Chapel. And my understanding is when Roberts sided with the liberals, he did not give a rationale for the 50% versus 50 people.
Exactly. Right.
What would you say to those that make the arguments? And you and I and Larry, the three of us have heard these all over the place. Some people make the arguments, oh, well, at church, people are singing, they're projecting, they're in small spaces, they're enclosed, they're there for long periods of time. But if we're going to compare it to casinos, I don't know, maybe you don't have singing in casinos, or at least you shouldn't. But how do we distinguish the situation where what you can't congregate this many people in a church, but somehow some of the same types of activities? I understand passing around the offering basket and all of that, but you can do away with, or I suppose have workarounds for those types of activities. What's the difference between 10 people, 20 people coming by and touching the same slot machines? Yeah.
Yeah. Hey, Charles, I saw, right.
Amen to that.
Charles, I saw a YouTube video of a Walmart, and it was like one of these flash mob, a church mob. They were singing praise songs inside a Walmart, and nobody was getting in trouble. And it went on for some
Masked or no
time.
mask? Do they have masks
Yeah,
on, Larry?
no,
Okay,
they did not.
that footage, Chuck, is great for your case because this is exactly what we're talking about.
Yes.
Hey, Chuck, real fast, we're up against a break, but how do people find out more about you? Thank you. That is so terrific. Thank you so much for joining us, Chuck. We want to thank everybody for listening. Tune in next week when we will have former Deputy National Security Advisor KT McFarland will be our special guest next week. She's the author of the new book, Revolution, and she is very outspoken when it comes to her opinion. So please join us next Saturday night to listen to her. And thank you for joining us tonight. Have a wonderful, safe rest of your weekend. And we will see you next Saturday. Headlines with a Silver Lining. Have a great week. God bless you.